Common formats of equations. There are several different types of equations that we will be dealing with here in this chapter. They're going to be the linear functions, quadratic functions, and exponential functions. Obviously, linear functions are what we call linear, which we talked about before, but then quadratic and exponential are nonlinear functions. They're specific types of nonlinear functions. So, how we recognize a linear function: any function that forms a line when graphed, or it increases or decreases at a constant rate. Those are called linear functions. And what a linear function would look like, we've already discussed, is obviously some sort of line. So a linear function looks like that, or we could have something like that, or even something like that is a linear function. Those are all different types of linear functions. Now, quadratic functions are a little bit different. They're a special type of nonlinear function. Quadratic functions are functions that form a U-curve or an N-curve when graphed. This graph will reach some sort of maximum or minimum point. Okay, so what I mean by a U-curve is it's going to start high, go down, and come back up and kind of look like a U. What I mean by an N-curve is it's going to start low and go up and then come back down. So kind of looks like a lowercase n there. So those are the two options for quadratic functions. We also sometimes call these parabolas. But we'll get more into that later. This is not important. You don't need to know this yet. Alright, so if we have a graph, these would be quadratic functions, something like this. Curves like that. Or if it curves like that. We could even have, and it doesn't really matter where it's located on the graph as long as it's a curve shape like that in some way. So those are all examples of quadratic functions. The last specific type of nonlinear function we're going to discuss now are called exponential functions. Exponential functions are kind of unique because there's nothing repeating in them. Exponential functions are functions that start low and rise quickly, or they could start high and fall quickly as the x value changes. The key thing here is as that x value changes consistently, so plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, or whatever, the y value is going to change very quickly. That's the idea. It's either you're going to go up very quickly or down very quickly. And another thing to note is the variable will be in the exponent. Instead of being the big number, it's going to be the small number in the corner. So that's another thing to note. Alright, so common exponential functions are going to look like this. Start low and then start to rise very quickly. So it goes lower on one side and then it rises high on the other side. Another possible function would be starting here and then dropping like this. That's another option. Or we could start up here and then drop down like this. These are all exponential functions. So basically, if it starts up in one spot and then changes very quickly in one direction or another, or if the x is in the exponent, then they are exponential functions. So those are your notes over some common formats of different types of equations that we will be talking about. You can look at the practice problems and watch the next video, and then you should be ready for the quiz over this material.